right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. For all those educators tuning in out there, we just released an updated newsletter last night with a whole bunch of new events we have coming up, plus a really cool contest with the Explorers Club designing their challenge coin for World Ocean Week coming up in June. So do take a few moments and visit that newsletter in your inbox, or you can head to exploringbytheseat.com and find all the events we have coming up. We're really excited for a particular event tomorrow. We are going to connect with the team from the Endurance 22 expedition. Last year, we followed along as they explored the Weddell Sea looking for Ernest Shackleton's ship, the Endurance, lost over 100 years ago. And near the end of the expedition, they did find that lost ship. So we're going to have kind of a year review, looking back at what that find means, what they're finding, looking over the data, and connect with some of those key expedition members. You don't want to miss that tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern. So we've got a great event in store for today. It is another in our series with Health Canada. Health Canada Presents. If you've been following along, you know we've explored hazards in the home. We've explored mold in your home. Coming up in the future, we'll be exploring clean water and radiation in our natural environment. But today we are going to look at clean air. Clean air, why should we care? So we have Jeff Eyamie joining us today. He is with Health Canada. He's a specialist with Health Canada. He's going to talk a little bit about sources of air pollution, how they affect our health, and then, of course, why students need to be air aware, how they can be aware of the air around them. If you are tuning in via YouTube, keep saying hi. I already have Classroom saying hi there. Great to see you joining in with us today. If you're in a camera spot, be ready. We will come and pick on you after the Kahoot for a little bit of question action. But for now, let me bring Jeff in here front and center with us. Hey, Jeff, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. Well, it's great to have you with us today, Jeff. It wouldn't be a great look at our environment if we didn't talk a little bit about our air. So I know you have your screen queued up in back. If you want to load the presentation, I'll let you take over for a bit.
Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the air outside. I'm really going to be focused on outdoor air. And I'm also going to talk about my least favorite subject, myself, and a little bit about what it is to be a scientist at Health Canada. So we're good to go, Joe. You can see me okay?
Absolutely. Looks good, Jeff.
Right. So if you learn one thing today, I hope it is that you should probably go outside and play. Now, don't do it right away. Do it with permission. But for most of us in Canada, the air is great outside for the vast majority of the time. So if you learn one thing today, it's that the air is fantastic and you should take advantage by going outside to play. Okay, so my job, and I should, before I go any further, I want to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is the home of the Red River Métis people. It's the place where Treaty 1 was signed, and it's the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, and Dakota people, as well as the Dene. So my job is air quality and health specialist. And what does that mean? Well, I get to do a little bit of a whole bunch of different sciences to get into to help people understand the ways that air quality affects their health and to provide advice for people and to keep on building our knowledge around air quality. So epidemiology is one of the fields that I get to work in. Chemistry, meteorology, the study of weather, climatology, the study of climate, forestry, all about the trees. And then I also deal with people. I deal with communicating with people, how people think and how they behave, psychology, social marketing, which is sort of a fancy way of saying change their behavior. And also I work in a government, and governments are political by at times. So my job has all of these different types of scientific areas in it. And then there's my other job, which is I am a novelist and a screenwriter for television. I write and direct short films. A picture of me, you can kind of see my bald head under a hat on the right-hand side of that picture. And I used to be a magazine editor and a journalist as well. And so those two things kind of sound really different, but they're actually really similar, because a scientist in the end is a storyteller, just like a person who writes a novel. So a person who writes fiction is kind of making something up, right? They're kind of telling a fib to tell truths about what they see in the world and the human experience. And using fiction like this is trying to provoke emotions, and you're using your emotions to tell this story. Well, a scientist is doing something in a totally opposite way, but for the same goal. So a scientist uses facts to prove the truth about how the world actually is. And they try to do it without bias. They try to do it without using their emotions or any preconceived ideas. They use a method called the scientific method to actually get the knowledge and try to prove it. Whereas a novelist or a fiction writer is using their instincts. They're using their emotions. So it's two different ways to build knowledge and to help people understand the world that they live in. There's that scientific method I was telling you about. There's no quiz or test after this, but this is the scientific method, which is very, very important for a scientist. You observe things, you question, you come up with a hypothesis, but then once you have your scientific experiment, it doesn't really mean anything in the world unless you actually communicate that research out to the rest of the world. So with my two jobs, both are fun. Both actually make the world a better place, because we can all connect with science and with storytelling, with fiction and with TV and that type of thing. Both add to our human base of knowledge. So what I try to do in my job with Health Canada is take science and put the emotion back in and try to tell people how this affects them and what it means to them. So what does it mean to be a scientist? Well, there's that kind of stereotypical idea of a person in a white coat mixing chemicals in a lab with all kinds of fancy bottles. Yes, that is a scientist, but that's not the only way to be a scientist. These two indigenous folks in South America are also doing air quality science. Those are monitors that they're actually working on in a rainforest. Is that a scientist? Absolutely it is. That's not the kind of scientist that I am. Hopefully some of you recognize this person. This is Neil deGrasse Tyson, a very, very famous celebrity scientist and a great storyteller. It's not the only way to be a scientist. In fact, we are all scientists. It's just that some of us have more training. And that's what you go to school to do, is to learn about the scientific method, to perform experiments and conduct research and continue on that training to be a better scientist and also a better storyteller. So what I do with Health Canada is I take the knowledge that research scientists have developed and I put it in motion. I mobilize it. And so I help it to take root in the world so that people can understand scientific facts and use them. I understand and accept that people have emotions. So even though the scientific knowledge has been developed without emotion coloring it or creating a bias, I put the emotion back in so that people can be aware of how that fact affects their life. So if people don't understand, then the job isn't finished and I will still be employed with Health Canada. And of course, I'm part of a scientific community. We are all working together to do this. Again, it's a very complicated sort of circle, but I just wanted to demonstrate that science is a cycle. So once you're finished with an experiment, you go back in and you use that to inform the next scientific experiment or research. You're always telling a story, and you're using the information that you hear to inform the next direction that you're going to go with science. Just a gentle reminder, go outside and play. The air is probably clean, and it's really good for you to take advantage. So usually the air outside is great. And when I go outside and I walk my dog, or I go for a jog, or play golf, or whatever, I usually take a second and go, you know what? I'm super grateful that I live in a place that has really good, clean air most of the time. And that helps me to be healthy, and exercising outside just makes you feel good. It gets you in shape, sure, but it also just makes you feel happier. And there is scientific evidence to support that. Sometimes, rarely, but sometimes because of things that people do and because of things that happen in nature, the air isn't as healthy for you. It's not very often, but it does happen. And so how can you tell? Well, sometimes you can tell by seeing or using your senses, smelling, but sometimes you might get some symptoms like stingy eyes, or a sore throat, or runny nose. And for some people, it gets more serious than that. There are groups that we call at-risk populations, or people who are vulnerable, such as folks that are senior citizens, people who are pregnant, infants and young children, people who are working really hard while they're outside because they're using their respiratory systems, their lungs and their heart, more than when you're just going for kind of a leisurely walk. So, for example, if you are conducting exercise outside and the air isn't great, you're going to be more vulnerable or more at risk. And that's the same with a construction worker or someone who is working really hard while they're outdoors. And then there are the people who have health conditions that make them a more at risk. Some diseases. And also one lung condition I wanted to talk about today a little bit, which is asthma. Now, if you are in a classroom right now and you look around you, you probably have classmates or maybe yourself who have asthma. And in Canada, we are the ranked third in the world for most new asthma cases. We're not entirely sure why, but that is a fact. In terms of numbers of new cases of asthma, Canada, number 3 in the world. About 1 in 6 Canadian kids now have asthma. It is the leading cause of kids going to hospital, and the things that trigger asthma attacks come from inside and outside. So I'll talk a little bit about those asthma triggers. And for those of you who already have asthma or know about it, you're probably managing it in some way. And this might be a little bit of a review for you even, but hopefully there'll be a little bit of advice that'll be useful. So my number one piece of advice for everyone, for those with asthma and without, is to use the Air Quality Health Index. And if you live in a city in Canada, you can access the AQHI, the Air Quality Health Index. And it is a simple 1 to 10 scale that talks about how clean the air is outside in your area. You can see at the bottom, there are messages about what to do considering the air quality. And if you're at risk, for example, if you have asthma, you'd look more towards the messages for the at-risk population. So here I've got like what you would find on the AQHI page for Calgary. This was a couple weeks ago. And it says that the air at that moment was 4 out of 10, which was moderate or sort of medium risk. And it says that you should maybe think about reducing or rescheduling any strenuous activities outdoors if you're experiencing symptoms. So if you're feeling a little short of breath, chest tightness, maybe it's a runny nose or stingy eyes. If you have any of those symptoms, you should maybe think about scaling back, maybe go for a run or play another time. But for the general population, if you're not experiencing any symptoms, at a 4, it's regular outdoor activities. And it's always good for you to be exercising outside. And exercise doesn't have to be work. It can be play. And so this is the AQHI. This is something that can really help you determine if the air is good or not so good. So what we're asking you to do is be air aware. Just know what number out of 10 you start to feel symptoms if you feel symptoms. So if you feel like you're, got a sore throat or shortness of breath, we say go to the AQHI, check what number the AQHI is at, and then the next time, or if you hear if there's a forecast, for example, you can look at the AQHI and go, maybe instead of scheduling exercise or having a soccer practice, at this point, we may do it another time. And just part of being air aware is thinking about how air affects you. Does it trigger asthma? Does it give you those symptoms? And of course, if the air quality is good, which it usually is, you should go outside and play. Okay, so some of the sources of unhealthy outside air. The number 3 source, I'm going to count it down. It's like a top 3 list. Number 3 source, industrial pollution. So that's sort of the big chimneys and factories and sort of what the classic definition of pollution, or what people think of when they think of pollution. That source is actually the 3rd largest contributor of unhealthy outside air. The number 2 source comes from vehicles, cars and trucks. Traffic-related air pollution is the 2nd largest. And the number 1, to many people's surprise, of unhealthy outside air is smoke. We all know that cigarette smoke is bad for you. So is smoke that comes from burning of forests, your campfire, what have you. There is a health hazard that comes from burning any type of biological mass, trees, grass, all of those things. So those are your top 3 sources. Other factors affect how healthy the air is, not just the source of pollution, but also what kind of land you're on. If it's a very flat place with a lot of wind, it's probably actually going to keep the pollution from sitting there and pooling up. So that's actually a better situation than, for example, being in a valley where some of the pollution could sit in a valley or be parked there and build. So weather and topography, or how the land is shaped, also affect how much health impact there is to the outside air. I want to show you this because I just think this is really cool. So if you were to watch the news or read anything or see anything about smoke, you're probably going to hear the term PM 2.5. This is sort of a new thing in recent years for people to understand, but PM 2.5 is a way of counting how much particles are in the air, how many particles are in the air, or what mass of particles are in the air. So I put a big red arrow beside it. PM 2.5 means particulate matter particles of 2.5 microns or less in diameter. And just to give you a sense of how small 2.5 microns in diameter is, you'll see the pinky red circles. 4, if you put them side by side, those are actually spheres and not circles. But those particles, if you put 4 of them like that, would equal 1 PM10 particle. If you took 5 PM10 particles, the blue particles, and put them side by side like that, it'd be about the width of a human hair. That's how small we're talking about when we talk about PM 2.5. I'll explain why that's important in a second. And then on the left, there is that kind of goldy thing that looks like a boulder. That's actually the size of very fine beach sand. One little piece of beach sand is that big in comparison. So you can see how small PM 2.5 is. You can't really see it unless there's a whole lot of it with the naked eye. And that is what smoke is made from. particulate matter. So how the AQHI works is it takes, well, yes, science, lots and lots of science. So they've taken how different types of pollutants affect people, and they've taken health numbers and they've taken pollution numbers and they've melded them together to create an index. So it actually, I'm going to simplify what I've put on these slides here, but it measures NO2, which is nitrogen dioxide, which is sort of a marker for the amount of pollution that traffic contributes, ground level ozone, which causes cancer, and that PM 2.5, which is the stuff that if it's really, really pooled up, you can see it, and they connect those to health outcomes. And they use a really simple formula that you can easily memorize. So here it is right here. I'm just going to trust that this is the most accurate way to do it. But basically, they take this, they take those 3 pollutants, and they turn it into a scale from 1 to 10, which is a whole lot easier to understand. I think you would agree. Again, the air is probably good. You should probably go outside and play. Okay, another big job a big part of my job is dealing with air monitors. And this is how we actually come up with the Air Quality Health Index, is by monitoring the air outside. Canada has the oldest network of pollution sensors in the world. It is called the National Air Pollution Surveillance System, or NAPS. And we have stations all across the country that actually measure our outside air in the same ways. Here's a map that has all of the NAPS stations that we have in Canada. And you can see they're spread all over the place. And they've been, I think it's close to 50 years we're coming up on. I think it's 46 years the NAPS network has been up and running. And so this is the source of our Air Quality Health Index. The instruments that we use are very, very expensive, tens of thousands of dollars just for the equipment. And then people who have full-time jobs are actually paid to maintain the equipment, and it's very, very precise. And it ends up creating this Air Quality Health Index where we can tell people what the health risk is, but also we can monitor if there's an emergency or if something really serious is happening. And this map, or this little picture, is actually from TV weather. It's from Global News, and it's from the 10 plus is actually smoke from a wildfire. And so we're just letting people know that the Air Quality Health Index is as high as we can measure it. It's very, very high risk. And in that case, we would probably recommend staying indoors. Very quickly, I want to talk about citizen science. Now, before I said we are all scientists, and that is becoming more and more the case as time goes on. And I hope that you are all going to be scientists as well. And that, to me, means using scientific method to contribute to our knowledge as a society. You saw the map that had all of those really expensive monitoring stations, the NAP stations. Each of those costs, I think the instruments at a minimum cost $200,000 once they're all in a cluster, roughly. The purple air monitor I've got on the slide right now costs about $300. And because of that, and because anybody can operate one from their house, I have one at my house. It's connected to a Wi-Fi network and then uploaded to a network that everybody shares. So it's a cloud-based monitoring system. These monitors are not anywhere near as accurate as the NAPS stations that are maintained by experts and specialists. But look at all of the numbers on the map at the bottom of this. Because so many people have the purple air monitors, we get a really nice full picture of how the air is in different places. We have to take it with a grain of salt. We have to be careful not to over infer or say that, oh, well, there's a big red 152. There must be something terrible happening there. We have to account for some irregularity. Maybe the purple air monitor isn't working perfectly, but this is a huge advance in our ability to monitor the air quality outside is citizen science. And Definitely encourage everyone to participate in citizen science whenever they get a chance. So clean air, why should I care? Well, clean air is good for you and can make you happy. And who does not want to be happy? It is a privilege to have clean air. And not every person and not every country and city and society has clean air. So Canada is a great place most of the time to enjoy clean air. We're polluting less around here in Canada. It's not perfect, but it's getting better. And we could always do more to improve our air quality. And that starts with knowledge. So that is about reducing the stuff that comes out of our tailpipes and chimneys and being careful when we burn. But it also is planting more plants. Trees and plants are a huge part of huge contributors to clean air outside. So here's what you can do. You can teach the adults. You can let them know about the Air Quality Health Index. You can let them know how important clean air outside is and what a privilege it is, and that we should work to improve it and maintain it. You can reduce the sources of pollution. You can increase the number of natural helpers, as I said, plants, because plants, through their own respiratory system, actually take in CO2 and put oxygen into the air for us. And then you can reduce your own exposure to unhealthy air by using the Air Quality Health Index to plan your activities. Yeah. So be air aware, be grateful, and enjoy clean air, and go outside and play. And that's my presentation.
All right. Awesome, Jeff. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. I think the biggest takeaway message is that we can all be scientists and that we can all contribute through citizen science. That's really, really cool. And of course, to get outside, play, exercise, whatever it is, get outside and enjoy that wonderful resource we have, that beautiful clean air. Very cool. Well, we are going to see what our students learned today. We're going to play a little Kahoot action before we do some questions. So let me share my screen here and let me show you how to join. You want to go to kahoot.it, and then it's going to ask you for a PIN number. 846-4556 is our PIN for today. If you have something right at your desk, use it there. But a lot of classrooms don't, so your teacher can put it up at the front of the classroom and you can shout out your answers to him or her, and we'll see how we do. So here comes my screen for real this time. There it is. And let's start getting some of our groups in. All right, I can see students joining already. Let's give a few more seconds to get a few more joined in here with us. There will be 4 questions today. There's some true and false. There is some multiple choice. Get your answers in as quick as you can. The quicker you get the answer in, the more points you're going to get. And of course, if that answer is correct, well, you get even more points. So we'll give it a few more seconds here. We've got our automatically generated names like the amusing lemming, the awesome bear, the winged rooster, and the mountain boa. Maybe 10 more seconds, and then I will get our quiz going, our true and false, our multiple choice. Oh, a few more students, a few more groups popping in. So maybe I'll give a couple more extra seconds as well. All right. So Jeff, just as we wait for a few more students to join, that home monitoring that you had that citizen scientists can use, where could you find one of those? Where could you pick one of those up?
They are readily available all over the place. So the one that I had the picture of is called Purple Air. So it has its own website. It's not affiliated with the government in any way, but it's an organization that offers those monitors. And then you can buy low-grade monitors, like somewhat affordable monitors, just about anywhere these days. So, but the Purple Air that has the large map that I showed, they have a website. I think it's purpleair.org.
All right. Well, I think we're ready. Let us get our Kahoot fired up. There's still a few trickling in, but let's get things going because we want some Q&A time. So here comes our first question on deck. We have a multiple choice. Which one does Health Canada suggest? Is it to beware of air, to be hair aware, to be air aware, or wear a hair? Very similar sounding, each one of those options, but what is it that Health Canada suggests that we do, especially if we're going to spend a good portion of time outside? All right, so be air aware. And we have that amazing tool where we can check the air index and see how things are looking with that great system of monitors that stretches coast to coast across our country. So what does that do to our leaderboard? The Mighty Chicken is holding down that top spot, but it is close. Let's go to another one here. What's the number one source of bad air quality in Canada? Was it wood burning? Was it exhaust pipes? Or was it factories? So smoke from those big chimneys we see coming out of those factories. Wood burning, exhaust pipes, or factories? You've got a couple more seconds to lock in your answer. All right. It is, in fact, wood burning. And I must say, I was a little bit surprised by that, too. You think we see so many cars on the road. We think that would definitely be that number one source. All right. The Mighty Chicken is holding on to that spot. Doesn't want to give it up. What is Canada's world ranking for people with asthma? Were we number 1, number 3, number 50, or number 100 in the world? Where did we rank for people with asthma? Got about 5 more seconds to lock that answer in. All right, good job, crew. Most went with number 3. We are number 3 in the world. And Jeff, how recent is that number from?
I think it's from about 3 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, it is a recent phenomenon for sure.
All right, we have one more question to wrap things up. Someone will see if they can bump the Mighty Chicken. Here comes our final question. It is a true and false. Only people who wear white coats can call themselves a scientist. So only if you're wearing one of those nice, fancy white lab coats can you say, yep, I am a scientist. All right, good job, crew. We know that is false. Being curious is pretty much the most important thing you need to be a scientist, to be curious, to ask questions, and then try to find those answers. Let's look at our final board here. In third place, we've got the Winged Badger. In second, we have the Inspired Raven. And first place, what's going to happen? The Mighty Chicken held on tape to tape. All right. Good job, crew. Thanks so much for playing along. We're going to visit some of our camera classes now, and we will also take questions via the YouTube live chat. So send your questions in there, and we will take your live questions as well. So let's get that going. Let's go to Toronto, Ontario to start off here. Miss Marvin's crew is hanging out. I see them bouncing. I think they're ready to ask us a question or two. Let's get them in.
Demetra.
Hey, Toronto, how we doing?
We're doing great. Yay. Okay, Kelly.
All right.
If the air is dirty and if the air is clean and you have symptoms, should you still go outside?
If the air is clean and you have symptoms like asthma symptoms, should you still go outside? Correct? Oui.
All right.
Good question.
That is a good question, and I really like your capes. Very cool. I would say that you can't really tell all the time whether the air is clean or not. If you have asthma, often there will be a trigger, and it could be that there's something that you can't really see or smell that is triggering it. So you probably have to be. I mean, maybe the answer is to just make sure if you, for example, have asthma, then make sure your medication is handy. Obviously talk to a parent, but Yes, you can't always trust your eyes or your nose to know if there's pollution in the air. So definitely, it's a very rare thing that that would happen, but it does happen sometimes.
All right, good question. Let's grab another one before we visit another crew.
Go ahead.
Why does the air make you feel better?
Why does the air make you feel better? That's a great question. So I think that when I think people are built to often to do a little bit of hard work, and that when you get your heart rate up and you start breathing in the oxygen, your body just feels better because it's wired to do that. It's designed to actually exercise. So you're ingesting all that clean air, you're getting more oxygen into your body, and it just helps all of your system, your whole system. Does that answer your question?
Yes, you're frozen again.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we leave, you guys, raise your hand if you're going to go outside and play today and get lots of oxygen. And yeah, good.
Excellent.
Your capes will look really cool in the
Those
air
capes
while you're
fly.
running around too. All right. Very cool. So let's grab another classroom here. We are going to go to another group, some grade 5 through 8 hanging out in a classroom here in Ontario. I'm going to bring them in. There they are. You guys want to give us a big wave? How are we doing today? I know they said their Wi-Fi was a little slow, so it might just take a minute to catch up. But when you're ready, unmute the microphone and let's grab a question or two.
Why do we still use fossil fuels?
Tough question for an air quality scientist to answer, because I probably I think that how a lot of our economies are built, and it's hard for people to addiction to fossil fuels. And hopefully we can continue to push to use electric and other methods of transportation like your legs to avoid using fossil fuels in the future.
All right. It is. You're absolutely right. It's the economy. It's not something we can turn off overnight, but it is something we have to keep working towards. Sometimes it can be not easy to do to change minds and convince people to make those changes.
Yep, 100%.
All right. I see a couple more hands. Let's grab another question.
No. Okay. What encouraged you to be a scientist?
Oh, great question.
That is a great question. So I actually sort of stumbled into being a scientist. I started off working in government communications. I was actually with Indigenous Services Canada for many years in the public relations department, and got an opportunity to come over to Health Canada to do outreach. And then the science actually came later, and I added some education and got into the science field after I had been doing communications for a few years, and I love it. It's because I love to learn, and there's like I said, everyone can be a scientist. We just have different levels of training, right? So I didn't realize how much I would love communicating science to people, but that's really I find that skills that I didn't think would translate into this job totally translate into this job, and I help a lot of scientists tell their story because they're not trained storytellers.
Yeah, that's such a really good point. I think in the last few years, scientists have realized that if they only tell each other about what they learn, it's not going to make a really big difference. So those of you out there who are really into art, maybe comics, designing videos and things like that, scientists need you. They need you to help make their work accessible to everybody else.
Right. And there are ways to do that. and still be scientific. Yes, go.
Absolutely. Okay, let's grab one more from this group, and then we'll visit our crew in London.
My name's Lennon. How long were you in university for to become a scientist, and like what university?
Yep. I have a university degree and I have a diploma in journalism. So I did about 7 years total, but that is and some additional university courses after that. So probably 8 years of total school, and some of that was to do a journalism diploma. So I think that getting a science degree takes 4 years.
All right. Well, we'll see if we have time to swing back your way. So if there is another question or two, maybe we'll pick on you. Before we visit our crew in London, I want to grab a question here from YouTube. And this is a question about, communicating science to the public. What medium have you found most effective, whether it's TV or online or like a comic book or something like that? Is there a medium you found effective?
Let me think about. That's a tough question to answer. I think that it really depends on the audience, and I always sort of focus on who the audience is that we're trying to communicate to, and try and think of ways that are going to move them. And it's that is sort of a tricky word in the world of science. Is moving someone or generating an emotion that promotes action or behavior change. So right now I'm actually working on a behavior change digital platform that lets the user actually go step by step through a process, and it almost feels like a choose your own adventure. You can use your phone or a browser or whatever, but it kind of breaks up the messages and lets you go step by step through protecting your home from carbon monoxide or better ventilation in your home and other things that we're developing for the future. But that can be really useful at times, but so could a comic book or an animation, or, it really depends on who the audience is and what their values are, what their attitudes are, and how you can tell that story in the way that affects them the quickest.
All right. Let's head to London. We have our Environmental Leaders Program with Miss From Pleasure. How are we doing today?
We are good. How are you? I've got Soraya here with a question.
Hi.
Right.
Why is Canada so high up with our asthma numbers, and is there something that we can do to improve this?
Yeah, that good question. Thank you. So there's a kind of a combination of factors that are probably at play. One is that our health system is set up to track it better than in other places. So you're much more likely to get a diagnosis when that happens. So we're probably tracking it better than in other places. It could also be that I know there are some examples of athletes being particularly vulnerable and more likely to get an asthma diagnosis. And so we're looking into whether for example, indoor soccer venues, I think we're looking at to see if there's something with the turf or the ventilation system that might trigger it. But I think the number one reason why our numbers are that high is because of the health system, more so than, and our ability to actually get a diagnosis and medication, rather than anything that's really happening in Canada with the air quality. But having said that, that doesn't mean that those asthmatic people don't exist. So we still have to do things to help protect them, because asthma is really a tough disease, and it's sort of this epidemic with young people that we need to be more cognizant of, for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Great question. Do we have one more over there?
Yeah, we have one more. This is Sonia.
So basically, I was wondering that what is Canada doing to like filter the air in already really polluted areas? Because I know you mentioned planting trees, but in some areas that won't be possible. So,
yeah, good question. We do have a regulatory system in place. Like we have people that inspect factories. We are working on, I think the federal government is part of the push to promote more electric vehicles. And I expect that plans will be in place to encourage people to buy EVs more and more as time goes on. Really, I know for me at my sort of altitude, which is kind of the ground level of the federal government, I'm always working with our active transportation folks to try and build better infrastructure so people are more likely to cycle to where they need to go, or walk, or take a bus, or take some kind of mass transit. We're also trying to promote, on the school ground, keeping linked to zero. That been many years, and we're continuing to do that. And then MICE and Health Canada, the researchers are always coming up with more information to say, this is what the health impact of traffic-related air will contribute. We should do things like a walking school bus, where you park the bus a block away and then have everybody walk to the school from there, to keep the emissions away from the schoolyard. So it's lots and lots of little things as well as big things. And then in terms of the big scale outdoor air quality, it's just so huge that it's very difficult to, the idea of filtering it or cleaning the air is very, very difficult to do. We can fix it at the source. That's what we try to do.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right. We'll just hang around for a sec. Do you have any more questions, or are we good to go there?
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
So we are sitting here in this awesome 350 acre wetland. That's our classroom, which is amazing. But we're just wondering, what is the value of saving these wetlands in terms of air quality? And it's such an important conversation at the international level. So as students, right, how do we enact change? How do we get things going at the provincial level so that we're kind of on par with, I know that's a really political question to ask. I don't want to put you in an awkward spot because you work for the federal government, but it's an important question that we're looking at here. So what do you think we should do?
Yeah. It's a fantastic question. You guys are so lucky to be in that environment. As a Manitoban, I will tell you that, I'm very cognizant of the value of wetlands. We have Lake Winnipeg here, which is basically the largest reservoir in the world because it's been controlled with its depth, and massive algae issues and level issues with that could have been regulated by better wetlands management on the way in. And I think that the evidence is pretty clear that wetlands are almost like the liver of the ecosystem, and they do so much to convert toxins into safer compounds that we need to be doing more to protect them at all times, and promoting them, building them. So it's always local action, right? It's always about just making sure that they're protected and that be there. I know that my colleagues, I do have colleagues that work in water quality, but it's not really the purview of, it's not really the jurisdiction of the federal government per se, or Health Canada at least. We deal with water quality. We deal a lot with recreational and drinking water. So it's sort of tied in terms of what I can say officially, but I know that, wetlands are a massive priority for us, and we sort of undervalue them. I think that concept of it being a swamp is wrong, and they have so much value that and they keep our environment clean and balanced, right? It's a great balancer.
Awesome. Can we just
do you ever want to know more about Lake Winnipeg? I
think we lost Jeff. Jeff, we lost you for a second there. You were telling us if we want to know more about Lake Winnipeg.
There's an amazing Nature of Things episode on Lake Winnipeg that talks all about the value of wetlands. Worth looking into.
we'll look into that. I encourage all of the elementary classes out there, especially if you're in Ontario, because that's what I know of. Find out what your local conservation areas are. Those are the people that take care of the water in your area. And they're probably doing tree planting opportunities. See if your teachers can get you involved with that, because that's going to help with the air quickly. Thanks, guys. Awesome.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Well, that was a great Q&A session. Jeff, thank you so much for sharing with us today about our air quality and why we should care. And I think I really enjoyed that last question about technology or filtering the air. I think we take nature for granted. It does so much for us for free. And if we protect it and we take care of it and we help restore it, that's going to go a long way to making sure we have that clean water, that clean air for years and years to come into the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been really fun. Thank you for having me on.
All right. The last thing I'll share is kind of a unwieldy link here. I was just on it looking at the quality for Toronto. It's about 3 today. I think London was 2. But it's really cool. So check it out. You can just search. I just searched Air Quality Canada. That's how I came up with this link here. And then you can even look at the forecast coming up in the week. So check it out. It's a really cool site to be able to kind of take a look and see, and then look somewhere where there is a forest fire or something like that and look at how that changes things. So it's really cool. Definitely worth playing around and checking out.
It's also on your weather apps. Yep.
Oh,
check out your
so
apps too. It's also there.
Weather Network and stuff. Perfect. All right. Well, big shout out to all of our classrooms. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for playing Kahoot and sending in those great questions. And Jeff, thank you for another great Health Canada Presents event. We're looking forward to diving into water and radiation in the coming weeks. But thank you for helping us become more air aware.
You bet. Let's all go outside.
All right. We're going to sign off for today. Thanks so much, everyone.